Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. My name is Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org and also the host of today's podcast. I'm very lucky to have a fantastic professional Scrum trainer here with me, Reggie Gardner, out of Utah. So obviously the weather there is far better than it is for me in Boston, Massachusetts. Hi, Reggie.
Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to listen to you talking and sharing some of your insights about your experience of professional Scrum and your journey here. So before we do that, Lau, can we just take a couple of minutes for you to introduce to our listeners who you are and maybe share something fun with our audience?
Sounds good. I'll do my best. I have a background as a developer. So I was a developer in C++ and also in .NET for quite a long time. I spent a big chunk of my career in one startup. Well, startup when I got there, at least. So as it grew, I went through a lot of periods of growth, transition, wore a lot of hats, had a lot of different experiences there for sure. I am in Utah. Lived here most of my life. It's snowing today, so I don't know if I'm going to argue it's better weather, but we do need the snow. I lived a little bit in California, and I also spent a couple years in Brazil, which was a great experience when I was younger. My wife and I have 4 teenage boys, and that's pretty adventureful. That keeps us busy. And kind of a side note on that, about 9 years ago as a family, we were looking for something to keep these boys busy with something good, and we started raising puppies for guide dogs for the blind. And we've raised 6 puppies altogether now. So that's been really fun, but really challenging too. And the very first one we raised, she wanted to become a guide. She guided for 5 years, and then she needed to retire. And so she came home 2 years ago, right at the start of the pandemic. So that's been really fun. And I can't go away from Guide Dogs for the Blind without saying, right when we started with them, they switched to only positive reinforcement training approaches, and their success rate went up significantly just from focusing on the positive. And I think there's a lesson in there for all of us.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that there really is one. Thank you for doing that with the Guide Dogs for the Blind. It must be heart-wrenching to say goodbye to these ridiculously adorable puppies or young dogs when they leave. But you seem to have dealt with it reasonably well. Yeah,
It's definitely is heart-wrenching, but yeah, it's also rewarding. So. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, excellent. And I think, well, maybe we'll lean into that sort of like positive reinforcement later as we talk about that. But before we do that, though, I think it's important to talk a little about your journey, as a software engineer writing in, the fabulous C++, which is, a language that I also used to write a lot of code in back in the day. I'd love to hear how you came to Scrum, how that journey, and then ultimately to be a professional Scrum trainer. Can you just take us through sort of the highlights of that journey?
Sure, yeah. So I was at this company that, was a startup when I got there, and I spent 10 years with the same team. So super stable, same 4 developers. We had one QA person that transitioned once, and the 5 of us, had a product line. We built multiple connected backend data products, and, we're in a startup, we're trying to do our best, we're trying to be successful. And so we looked at a lot of, Scrum and Agile stuff, and we were using a lot of the basic ideas. We were doing our best, working in iterations and trying to apply a lot of the principles. We did a lot of extreme programming stuff, pair programming, that type of thing. Well, after 10 years, this company decides we've got to build our next generation platform, and it's multiple pieces of hardware and software, all brand new. And instead of working in our small little teams, basically in silos, we need 40 to 50 people working together to build this new stuff. And they asked me to help lead because I'm kind of into Agile and teamwork and stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. And not realizing this is way different at 40 or 50 people than it is at, a team of 4 to 5. And so we just were failing miserably. I mean, this was not going well. This was, holy smokes, we can't get things to build. We can't get our systems to talk to each other. For the first time, we started facing significant turnover in that organization. So we were just really struggling. And that organization at that time had a really strong internal training program. The founder was a former university professor, big believer in education. And he was bringing all this stuff, great training courses, and I was attending tons of it. So were all the other leaders. And it just wasn't getting us to where we needed to be. It was useful, but just wasn't getting us there. So I started looking around. I need help, right? I thought I knew Scrum and Agile, but I apparently don't know what I'm doing. So started looking around for help. And one of my goals was to find something that we could bring training into this internal university. And so after exploring lots of different training courses, doing a lot of reading books, listening to keynotes, podcasts all the time, I finally found Scrum.org and learned about the trainer program. So I was like, oh, we could bring this in and help train our people. And that's kind of what really got me hooked on to Scrum.org initially. But what's kept me here was when I actually came and attended the training, actually unlocked some serious stuff that I'd missed in my Agile and Scrum understanding. And again, it's this backdrop of, I wasn't just looking around a little bit, I was looking deep and broad for answers, and Scrum.org just enlightened me on a few key things. And so I just became real passionate about it from that point forward.
Can we lean in a little bit on those things? Talk a little bit about the sort of realizations, those little aha moments you had when you were thinking about professional Scrum and trying to apply it. You had these 50 engineers all working and trying to deliver this integrated platform. What were those sort of aha moments?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I think back is, you go to school, you become a coder, if you're like me, and you're happily coding away, and then someday the boss comes in and he's like, when's this going to ship? And you're like,
love that moment.
Right. And it's like, I didn't have that class in school, and I don't know. And it was kind of that, we're trying to lead this big effort, and there's all this pressure, like, well, when are we going to be done with this? When are we going to be done? And so we were doing a lot at that time with story points and velocity. And the big question I had was like, I can't get anywhere near predictability. Like, we're not even coming close to that. So that was a big question I had. I mean, that's why I was coming out like, help me figure this out. And instead, I come and I learn about Kinefin, and that was new to me, despite all this learning I had. And that just opened up the world. It's not making it predictable. It's doing an end run around the fact that you're working in this unpredictable nature. And that's what you have to deal with. That is the challenge, is dealing with that. So that empiricism, I was familiar with that, but it hadn't sunk in quite so deep as, oh, this is the core problem. And then from there, a lot of the values, that people side is so absolutely, that's where the power is. So those values to build trust, energy, improve those relationships, build that interaction. I mean, that's what was really key for me.
So the empirical process, breaking things down, and then empowered, self-managed teams. That's always been written about Scrum, but I guess until you've actually practiced it and been exposed to it and really thought deeply about it, it's kind of hard to apply. Do you think that your journey do you think having that failure was necessary almost to get to the point that you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think failure is the best teacher for sure. Certainly very humbling, oh, I thought I could do anything. And then you're really, really struggling. And so absolutely. I mean, failure experience, that's the best teacher by far.
Yeah. And then how's Scrum changed you so that was a few years ago now. So you've been doing this for a while. You took those ideas, you started applying it. I mean, I guess the most important question is, did you deliver? Did those 50 people deliver that next platform and turn that company into a unicorn and make everybody super successful and drive Lamborghinis?
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. Well, it did turn things around, and that company is very successful. I'd left. What's it been, about 3 years now? I left. So, but it definitely made, we turned the corner, right? It's like, okay, we're actually going to bring this to market, and definitely turn things around. Got the stability, the team's stability back on track, the energy back, and real forward progress. And now it's a live system for sure.
Yeah, so you actually delivered some value. So since that first time, what's changed? What additional things have Scrum, you've been applying it, you're a professional Scrum trainer, obviously. What additional things? How's the journey since then? I mean, we're always learning, right? Tell me a little bit about that. What have you learned since?
I mean, that's maybe the number one thing, is that we're all always learning. No matter how much we've learned, how far we've come, there's just always more to learn. And, that empiricism, that unpredictable nature, the unknown unknowns, means what worked in the past may not apply in the future. So you can't come in with, oh, I've got it, I know how to do it now, because it could be all different. It's different people, different contexts, different problems. And so that mindset of discovery it just goes deeper and deeper for me. Like, it's all emergent and all has to be discovered every time.
Yeah. The first truth is that there is no such thing as the truth, right? And you realize that every increment, one increment at a time, sometimes painfully, unfortunately. So this leads us to, you're now a professional Scrum trainer. Why did you want to become a professional Scrum trainer, other than, I suppose, the economics of bringing this into the organization where you were at so you could teach the other people? But what other reasons?
Well, another big one was, we were just talking about just learning. And I just wanted to be part of this community, because I recognize there's just so much talent and experience and knowledge. So a lot of it's just, I want to hang out with those people. I want to learn from them. And I mean, that's huge to me. And
I think that, the community is a huge, one of the reasons why I'm here as CEO is because of the community. I think, that positive, respectful, energetic group of people that are always available. And because they're all over the world, they're always available. You can send a Slack message and somebody will reply to you. You're like, wow, that's awesome. So the community was one of the key motivators, being able to deliver consistent content, being able to learn together and deliver that. The last question, which is something that, we've been writing about a lot here at Scrum.org, and I'd love your perspective on this. What does professional Scrum mean to you? You were doing Scrum before. You were doing XP Scrum, the classic, marriage before. What does professional Scrum mean to you now?
Now, that's a great question. I think about that a lot, actually, and I think my understanding of that, continues to evolve. But it's that deep understanding of, it's not a process, because that's where I kind of came into and encounter this all the time, right? Oh, Scrum's a process. Let's apply this process. And it's not that. It's a mindset. It's applying empiricism and using that. And it's having a lot of integrity. So that professional side is where I've been like, man, I have to be honest about this. Get situations of pressure where, like, we really need a date for this, or we really want this or that. And you just have to say, well, this is reality. I had this experience where we did this major rewrite, big visible, most visible effort in the company at the time, pretty big company. And we had it on most of the platforms, but not the last one, which is the big one. Most of the customers are on this big platform. Got pressure for, give me a date that's 100%. You can meet this date. And I was like, I can't give you a 100% date unless it's going to be so far in the future to be useless. But I was like, I'll give you a 90% date. And what happened was, we got all of our stuff done within that window that we gave them. we released to a small portion of our customers, and when releasing at scale, we discovered there was a huge flaw in their firmware. So it wasn't our code, it was this platform we were running on. And we couldn't go on, we couldn't push this out. It was going to be a miserable experience for our customers. And so we talked to the company, and they're like, yeah, we'll put that on our list, we'll fix it in 6 months. Well, that wasn't going to fly. So we had to go back and rework it, rework our code to work around this problem in the firmware. And we did it, and it was successful, and it's still successful today, but we missed that 90% date because we didn't know we're going to encounter this huge blocker. And so that it comes back to that for me. It's that integrity of, let's just be open and honest about the reality of this, and let's deal with that reality together.
Yeah, it's interesting. That honesty isn't. I don't think many of us are mischievous or Machiavellian in our responses to customers or to other stakeholders, but ultimately, often we lie to ourselves because we want to deliver it fast. We want to amaze. We want to make people happy. We want people to like us and respect us. And I think what Professional Scrum does is it takes the personality out of it. It's not about you. It's about ultimately the cone of uncertainty, which I know isn't in vogue anymore, so we should probably not use it. But if you look at the work that we're doing, that your understanding improves incrementally as you deliver value, right? And that's what Professional Scrum provides. It obviously doesn't have all the answers. In fact, it probably asks more questions, but it takes you down that route. I think that's a key tenet to what Professional Scrum is, and what being a professional knowledge worker is actually ultimately, I think, at the end of the day. So, Reggie, thank you for today. We could have talked for hours. I've got a bunch of other questions that I'll have to ask you at another time, but we're trying to keep these Scrum.org community podcasts, sort of enough time for somebody as they're eating their cereal in the morning or walking their dog, they can listen to and maybe get a little bit of value out of them. So thank you for your time. And thank you, audience, for listening today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully you'll get to enjoy the snow today, Reggie.
Thanks so much, Dave. Really appreciate it. So much fun to be here.